So, feminist theory is not a therapy by, for, and about women. It's not male bashing. It's not a celebration of being a victim of society and society's values being imposed on you. There's a concern with social justice. Social justice becomes a really important theme of this work, and so we'll learn about that. We'll learn about that here in a little bit. But at this point, I think it's important to know that social justice and advocacy mean the same thing. We need to advocate for social injustice when we see it. So free men and women, all backgrounds from unhealthy impact of misguided socialization. So feminist really does apply whenever society is squashing a group of people. So when a society is imposing their values on a group, women, men, whoever that might be, that is when feminist theory applies. So common philosophy, all lenses focus on issues of diversity, complexity of sexism, the importance of social context in understanding gender issues, challenges male-oriented assumptions regarding what is healthy and normal, gender role expectations heavily influenced our identity from birth on, and so it understands that these things are at play, that society is pushing men and women into certain roles. So boys do these things, women do these things. Gender and identity. So femaleness, maleness are central to the theory, and it understands that they're central to us as human beings. They're part of our identity. That there are these biological sexual traits, that they are socially constructed gender roles, expectations, and that these gender roles impact the problem, whatever it is that the client is bringing into you. So their gender roles have pushed them into a mold. They have forced them into behaving in a certain way that is either congruent or incongruent with them individually. So much of behavior we classify as male or female is a cultural constriction. So what's biological? What is socially constructed? This becomes a big part of what feminist is trying to do. So yes, there are biological things. For example, men can't nurse the young. Men can't nurse their children. Women can, men cannot. Men cannot give birth, and women can. So there's some of these things that are biological, but there's so much more that is socially constructed. So, for example, when I was little, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, as I mentioned earlier, I spent quite a lot of time with my grandparents, and I can remember wanting a Cabbage Patch doll so badly. Oh, I wanted it so badly. And I mentioned before that, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and so I can remember one Christmas finally getting a Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas, and his name was Travis, and Travis came with his adoption papers, and he had blonde hair, and oh, he was just the greatest. And so I took Travis everywhere, and I can remember pulling up to the Hilltop Inn, going out to dinner with my grandparents, and of course Travis was with me. I seatbelted him in right next to me, and it was time to go in, and I bring Travis in, and I remember my grandfather, whom I love this man. I remember him saying, "Tell him to leave the damn doll in the car." And so that sent a little bit of a message to me. That is society trying to tell me, I need to play with toy guns, I need to play with tractors, I need to play in the dirt, I don't need to play with dolls. It also began to tell me that, my job is to work hard because my grandfather worked so incredibly hard. So my job is to work hard. It's not so much to, to parent and guide and soothe my children when they're suffering or when they're in pain or when they're upset or whatever that might be. That's not my task. My task is to work hard and bring home money. And so that's just kind of an example. So gender role expectations influence our identity and how we see ourselves. And so in that moment in the Hilltop Inn parking lot, I can remember my identity. I was told that my identity is something different, and men don't have to be that way. I can care for our boys just as well as Pam can. And so it doesn't have to be that way, but society leans us towards that. It really, really does. So the dominant culture. So this is the people who are squashing the other populations. That's the dominant culture. So the dominant culture is damaging to those who don't fit the mold. There is low tolerance for people who are for people who don't do what they're told, think for themselves, speak up, advocate, those kinds of things. Second point here, boys are supposed to shut up and take it. To keep it all in, it's harder for them to release or vent without feeling girly, and that can drive them to shoot themselves. And so this was Scotty, a 13-year-old boy, who was talking about this. So most of us have had probably an experience of being teased. Something around us was wrong for our gender, like we threw like a girl, or you smell like a boy, or something like that. And so just telling us that we are not fitting this mold.